I can die or I can come out. Ted Hughes said, write what you can't bear to admit. Only you can tell your story. You're the only person equipped to tell this story.
Thank you so much for joining us today, K Tempest. You are just putting out a new album now. It's called Self-Titled.
Yeah.
In the same way that you yourself are self-titled as well.
Yes.
And, well, I'd actually like to get really into the deep stuff of the album, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's okay with me.
Because, I mean, listening back and forth pretty much, I noticed the recurring theme of the album is you talking about this sense of feeling lost for a long time, sort of before you arrive at this place of clarity. I think you articulate it mostly on Know Yourself, but then there's a lot of other songs that pick that up as well. And I guess that had me sort of wondering, how do you know? Because I feel like there are very few people out there that can actually claim to know themselves truly.
What I think is important to say that was said to me by Travis Alabanza, who is a beautiful person, and she's been very inspiring, although she wouldn't even know that she has been. But in my encounters with her over the years, something that she said to me was, it's also okay to be uncertain. Like, just because we have discovered something about ourselves, we can also be uncertain. We can also have days when it doesn't feel as good as other days. Like, you know, there is no need for things to always feel definite, and to like banish uncertainty from, she was talking about the trans experience. It just frees up a bit more space to be like, oh, I'm alive, you know, I'm alive.
So it's more about knowing yourself and who you feel like who you want to be in the certain moment, rather than making a definitive statement about yourself.
Yeah, because what do we know? What does anybody know about where they're going or who they're going to be?
I don't know anything.
What?
Look at me.
You're beautiful.
Oh God!
You're beautiful.
Don't make me cry,
You're
please.
beautiful. What I can say is, I know how it feels now to be alive, and I know how it felt for many years to not feel like that. I know how I felt as a child, and I know that where I am at now holds the child that I was, in a way that I turned my back on that child for many years. I couldn't face myself. I was divorced from myself. I was numb. I was trapped. It was painful. It doesn't feel like that anymore. It doesn't feel like that. And when I think on my future, I think I know who I can see, but I don't know. I don't know my future in the same way that I don't know the present of anybody else. Like, we don't know. But what we can say is, there is no burden on a trans person to know any more than there is a burden on a cis person to know. Life is, it is transitory, you know, and that's okay. We're people that, we're in transit, you know?
I mean, I think you sort of speak about that on Breathe as well.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how the line goes. I think when I was young, I was a little boy.
Yeah.
Then puberty started, something like that.
Yeah.
So, how much of that sort of feeling of getting lost do you think is attributed to the fact that you do get pushed in the wrong directions as well as a trans person?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, at the time I had no knowledge of what was going on. I had no way of articulating it. There was no understanding by my caregivers or the people in my community. I didn't know why I was how I was, and there was no willingness to understand it as anything other than just stop thinking about this. This doesn't exist for anybody else. Like, you know, throughout my life, I was like a little boy. When I was young, I lived as a boy. At school, I was a boy. My friends were boys, people, that was what was happening. But my family it was never spoken about. No, it was like, oh, you're a tomboy, you grow out of it.
Oh yeah.
You know, this thing. And then I hit puberty, and then I had to be a girl. because you have to be. And then I experienced
Because there's
something.
no other way. Like no one tells you about it, right? When you're that age, it's like,
Well, maybe you and I sitting here in front of a film camera, maybe the fact that there is more conversation about it, maybe it would be different now. I don't know. I don't know. And I think what I can say is that the fear that somehow like having more understanding that there are trans people in the world is going to create more trans people in the world it's I just want to redress that balance, because what it really means as a trans person who was unable to come into life until I was in my late 30s, my I was like 34, 30, when I was finally able to say, hang on, I can die or I can come out, like,
yeah.
you know. And if I had the language to say that at a different time, my whole life might have been different. When making this record, I thought about the pain that I've been in my life. There was a moment when I first read Leslie Feinberg's Stone Butch Blues, which is a novel.
Oh, I just started that. It's beautiful.
It's the way that I found that book is like staggering. I was completely disconnected from community. I had no access to queer community. My only access to queer community would be through my partner. So that, you know, I had not, my whole thing was music, creativity. That was my thing that kept me alive. I put that top of everything else and it kept me going. I made a decision, like, I could either go into destruction or I could go into creativity. I didn't know that decision was also bound up in my gender dysphoria. I didn't know at the time. I went to a party. I was not very well. I met this girl. I was saying to her, it was a queer party. I was like, this is amazing. Like, what? I was telling her I don't really have access to community. The next day, she met me with a hand print. She'd printed out Stone Butch Blues. She'd hand bound it. She put it in my hands, A4 pages bound. She just said, read this. I never saw this person again. She didn't know me, but she saw in me the need for community. And she gave me Stone Butch Blues. I read it on the bus home. I could not stop crying. I couldn't read it. It was so raw and painful and real and true. I couldn't stop. I couldn't read it. I couldn't not read it.
But it's so true to the experience, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. And so when I think about this album, or also this novel that I'm writing, I've just finished a novel, when I feel afraid of showing up, or when I feel nervous, or when I feel like I shouldn't, or I mustn't, I think about that book, and I think about the experience of that person that I was, suddenly having that book in my hands, and I think about that person that gave me that book. I think about us, I think about the community, and I think, like, I have to give what I have received. And it may be the case that somebody needs to hear this. Somebody who is going through puberty, or somebody who is right at the end of their life, that has been closeted and has had to keep it in. There may just be this moment of, like, that thing that happens when it's like...
There's always something that pushes you over the edge in that sense.
Yeah.
In one or the other direction.
Yeah. So that makes me feel like, okay, there's no question. I have to do this. The album wants to be made. This stuff needs to be written. Ted Hughes said, write what you can't bear to admit. Write what you can't bear to admit. Because that's how I will heal the wound, and that's also how I will connect. That's why poetry is profound. Because it's very difficult. You know?
Absolutely. And it does feel really pretty raw what you're laying down on the album as well. I feel like a lot of your music and a lot of your poetry for, well, the last few years has been, I mean, definitely autobiographic, and definitely in a sense also very specific to some of your own experiences, but it's never been this, I feel like it's never been written out this clearly, like you actually listing off things that happened to you in your life and the way they sort of affected you, especially on Breathe, for example.
Well, Breathe is a really interesting one, because I was in the studio. Fraser said to me, I want to hear what only you can write. Only you can tell your story. You're the only person equipped to tell this story. And he told me this. He had worked with Stormzy on Gang Signs and Prayer, which is the first big album that Stormzy put out. And Stormzy was expected at that time to write an album of like club bangers, like street bangers, you know, like wordplay and like bravado, and that's what was expected of him. And he could have done that and had a very successful album. But what he decided to do was write about his faith, write about his mum, and it was hard for him to actually be all of the things that he was on record, rather than just the thing about him that was acceptable and digestible for others. He said, actually, my manhood, my personhood is broader than that. And so he made Gang Signs and Prayer.
Yeah.
When I heard that description of how an artist who I think of as really successful and complete had struggled to get through something difficult in order to meet themselves on record, I was like, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. So then I wrote Breathe off the back of that conversation in one take, wrote it, recorded it. I was like shaking. It was like first take, first thought, right thought, done. I just had to get it out one time, you know.
So what I'm hearing from this is that it's done wonders to you working with Fraser.
Oh, yeah. He's so inspiring because he expects excellence. He requires it from himself, from me, from the experience. Like, he thinks about things in this way that he has a very wide perspective on things. He is able to kind of sit back behind and look at things. And I'm usually like down in the engine room, like down in getting grubby and like, you know, and he takes a step back and he's very kind of majestic in his vision, and it creates this big music. Yeah.
It is. It does have, actually, the first word I wrote down when I heard "I Stand on the Line"
Yeah.
was huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. Well, it's massive. But because I said to him, I want to make big songs. I felt ready to do that, you know.
So how is this going to be heard? How do you think people are going to perceive this at the live shows as well?
Yeah, I think it's going to be incredible. I feel like it's going to mean a lot to people. That's my feeling. I really feel that. I think it's because it means a lot to me, and it meant a lot to Fraser, and the whole experience has been beautiful. And I think when something carries that kind of energy, then there's some brightness to it that I think will connect, I think.
I think so too. And I mean, you really are also the kind of artist that like establishes that sort of connection with their fans as well at shows. This also had me wondering if you'd ever thought about making a live album, just to
the thing about a live album,
see if it translates.
Yeah, I would love to do that, but like I would have to create something out of the existing material that lived in a live setting in a way that told some kind of a story. That I'd have to find a way of there being purpose to it that was satisfying, and performance is a really crucial part of what I do. But something that is sacred about it is that it happens in that moment only. You know, that's what gives it for me this is like, it's the presence of it. We're really here.
Yeah.
And tomorrow it's gone. So to record it, sometimes even just knowing there's a recording going on, it kind of it does
kind of spoils it.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
but then if we did something like, I don't know, if we had like a full live band or like an orchestral version, or we were in some place that was particularly special acoustically, and I managed to thread the lyrics together in some way, then I would love to do it at some point. Yeah. Thanks for the suggestion. Yeah.
Always happy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've mentioned that sort of your live shows do change the dynamic of your songs. There's something in like interacting with the audience that like, gives them a different meaning as well. How do you experience that?
Well, my whole life, I've been in this relationship with the stage and with performance, which I've always felt like is totally beyond me. It's like, it's an instinctive connective, a kind of out of body experience. You know, it's like I both have no control over it, and I'm also deeply in control of what's happening at some level, right? But working with Fraser, I've realized that actually maybe what I would like to do is be less visited by the force and more decisive about my role in that place. And by that, I just mean things like when I get full of adrenaline, it does something to my body and my voice. You're like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
and I can like, to fight the nerves sometimes I kind of like, I go inwards, and sometimes I hunch over and I try and like pull this thing up down from the floor, and I'm trying to, you know, trying to ground myself through bass frequencies and all this stuff. But I have this thing of like, well, actually maybe I could learn how to be, yeah, more decisive in my performance and less like, yeah, visited by like chance each night. I don't know, that's just the feeling that I've been thinking about.
Less going with like the individual emotion that hits you at the time.
Yeah, and having a design, an internal or an emotional set of kind of hooks to get myself from the beginning to the end of the show in a way that like feels consistent. I don't know, this is just what I'm thinking about.
What kind of hooks? What do you mean with that?
Like, when I wrote this song, who was I addressing? In that address, would it be intimate? In which case, bring your energy down. Who are you addressing? It's like, just to try and battle the nerves and the adrenaline and the excitement. Sometimes you're trying to reach everybody, and actually what you do is push them away. And that if I was to think about addressing not the audience, but addressing the song, the world of the song, then the audience comes to me. I saw Tyler, the Creator, the other night. It was an amazing show. It was like 90 minutes of one person on stage in a massive, it was like a big stadium show. Arena, it was an arena show. There must have been 20,000 people there, right? And it was so internal. He was bringing us in because he was just like in. Yeah, it was very interesting because I had been thinking about this stuff, and then I saw this example of like a successful version of that feeling, you know?
I think I do.
Yeah.
Is it hard? Is it exhausting? Sort of going with whatever the moment dictates you to do?
Yeah, because you don't know. So you're kind of jumping out of a plane every night. And then it's like, well, maybe today I'll fly, or maybe I'll fall, maybe my parachute will break, maybe I'll fall in the sea, maybe I'll be caught by loads of people. Like, you don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe there's something to be said for actually allowing a bit more like dynamic control.
Yeah. I think I've got one last one for you, because
How was your day?
my day,
Yeah.
it is so hectic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been going on?
Are you interviewing me now? Is
I
this
just
what's
thought maybe I should just ask you a question just so that you know that like I'm here and you're here, you know.
You can ask me all the questions. This is the third thing we're filming today.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be really glad to get home.
Yeah.
But I'm also really glad to be here right now. Really.
It's so nice for me to just be like, oh yeah, of course. Everybody has a day, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. What, you've got a last question? Let's do it. Let's do it.
No worries. I'll answer any of your
Yeah.
questions anytime. So for a lot of artists, there's you know, they'll drop an album,
Yeah.
they'll play a tour, and then you really won't hear from them for like 3 or 4 years until the next record.
Right.
But then with you, there's always something, right? You're just steadily always putting things out. There's like standalone songs. There's I don't know. There's always poems. There's. Do you ever not create?
No, there's all, the way it works is that I'll have the idea that there'll be the idea that is finished, so that's this album, it's finished. But then as soon as you put it out, it has a new life, which is the touring life. So that's performance, and then that's ongoing, that's always happening. And then as soon as the idea is finished, it moves out of the headspace. There'll be another idea here that can then move in. So there's a novel that I've just finished, literally submitted it yesterday. So that moves into this space, That novel will be published in April. So then I've got more work to do on the copy edits. So that's kind of still here. Once that gets to here, then it's into like put that out mode, performance mode, so that it can leave that space. And then as the ideas come around, there'll be 2 or 3 other ideas always, like here at the back of my brain. But there's no space. I'm not allowed to look at them. I don't have time. If I try and think about them, my head's going to explode. So they just wait. And then once this one's come around to here, this one will move to like there, and I'll see it in my peripheral. And it's like, I know you're there. I can't look at you right now because I'm doing this. And then as that one gets to about there, this one's, and then I'm like, oh, then I can start thinking about this one. Normally it will be in a different form because I'm all like, there'll be deadlines backing up for the different things that I work in. So the novel comes, there'll be like another record that's like, okay, I know what I want to do with that, but I'm nowhere near being able to. So that will kind of stay there. And then there'll be one up here that's like, I've got a character idea, but I don't know who they are or like where they live. I just know this about that person. Maybe that's going to be someone in a play, or maybe it's a dramatic monologue, or, and then there'll be something else like here that's like, oh, I've got this idea for like a trilogy based in this place or based on that character. So they're always
So,
here.
at the very least, in the back of your mind, you are always creating.
All the time. There's all these ideas, and it's just about like what I've got headspace for. And it's like a kind of like, I was explaining this to someone the other day, and she said, wow, it's like a runway. It's like you've got this, like, you're like air traffic controlling these crafts that are coming down and moving around, and then you're sending them on their way. Otherwise things get like blocked up and everyone explodes, which is basically what it's like in my head.
Well, thank you so much for joining anyways. I've had a great time with you.
Thanks, Faye.
Thanks,
Thank
Kay.
you. Yeah.
That's perfect.